Welcome back to Cash Talk, everybody. I'm Joe, and I'm here to talk about the new movie coming out, Dune. Now, we don't have Game of Thrones anymore. We don't have Lord of the Rings anymore. We kind of have Harry Potter, but it's not that great. I mean, I don't hate them, but it's definitely not capturing the magic the way that the old movies did. I feel like they're trying way too hard to not be magical. Like, I don't know, it's weird. I can't really figure them out, but we'll see with the next one and how it goes. Star Wars is over. Doesn't look like we're getting Indiana Jones anytime soon. Really, the only big fantastical franchise we have is Marvel, and kind of after post-Avengers Endgame, look, I'm always going to see superhero movies. I love superhero movies. I grew up on the comic books, but like the excitement's kind of died down now. I mean, I was excited during all the Phase 1 movies of seeing all these new characters. So again, I'm excited to see this phase of characters, but with 10 years of hype building up to Avengers, the months leading up to Avengers Endgame, I was never that excited before in my entire life to go and see a movie. Like I couldn't sleep at night. And now that that's kind of gone and done with, I'm kind of subsided a little bit. I'm like, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing, Shang-Chi and Captain Marvel 2 and everything. But there's not a whole lot of, diversity in the pool of, fantastical cinema. I mean, you got James Bond coming out, and sure, you got DC. Batman's my favorite superhero. I'm excited for that. But there's no, great sci-fi fantasies out. We got The Witcher, but, now we gotta wait another year for that season to come out. And as much as I love TV, I love owning, a trilogy of Blu-rays. All three Avengers, the Dark Knight trilogy. I just like owning a trilogy. We don't have anything like that anymore. So, a lot of people are kind of looking to fill that void, and rightfully so, because we don't have any big, giant, sci-fi, medieval, whatever you want to call it, blockbusters in theaters right now are coming out soon, except Dune. So a lot of people are asking the question, do you think Dune is going to be the next Star Wars or the next Lord of the Rings? And my answer is no. I don't think anything could ever be like Star Wars, and I don't think anything could ever be like Lord of the Rings, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I would like for this movie to stand apart from those and be its own thing. But I seen the original Dune movie, and it wasn't that amazing. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if I watch it now, I'll look back on it and think differently. Maybe I was just too young. But then again, I saw the original Star Wars movies when I was very young, and I loved those movies. And I think in terms of why Star Wars was a lot more well received was just the creativity that went behind that movie. It changed cinema, genre cinema, forever. It placed its stamp on Hollywood, which would have other directors and filmmakers come in and try and replicate with all these other sci-fi movies and shows and everything. And nothing has quite lived up to that scene of Darth Vader saying, "I am your father." Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that one aspect of the movie made it 100 million times better than Dune, but in terms of even marketability, Star Wars had an edge over Dune that Dune didn't have. I remember when I was very little, my grandma, who's never seen the Star Wars movies, knew what Star Wars were because of the colorful swords, the lightsabers. And when you see the trailer for that for the first time coming out, this big, epic space opera, sci-fi, action adventure with colorful swords, people that can move things with their mind. It was just amazing that we were getting something like that all the way back then. And what did it come out? The 1970s, I believe, the late 70s, early 80s. And it was revolutionary. And Dune, although the books were very well loved, I think from what I remember, it wasn't as exciting as Star Wars was in the beginning. It wasn't as immersive. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's big sand creatures, and there's some battles in there, and there's some action, good choreography, and good acting, and there's sci-fi sprinkled around in there, but it wasn't that exciting. Now, look, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I know that these books are a lot more political than Star Wars are, and Star Wars is, political. Everything's political in its own aspect, but Dune took a lot longer to get exciting and to get the ball rolling than Star Wars did. Star Wars comes right out of the gates, an adventure film. It is a fun adventure film, whereas in Dune wanted to take its time building up to something that was going to be great. It's the same thing with Lord of the Rings. that movie, The Fellowship of the Ring, came out of the gate swinging. It was this fun, sprawling, giant adventure. The fight scenes were phenomenal. You know, the set designs, the costumes, the orcs. There was battles. There was friendship and brotherhood and, like, all this, like, stuff that was just so much fun to watch. And I remember watching the first Dune, and it wasn't that fun. It took a lot of time to set up. And I'm sure that Dune has the potential to be something great, and I think that now, especially after watching something like Game of Thrones, where you'll literally go 6 episodes without anything exciting happening, but just being so immersed in the story because of great storytelling, that it might stand a better chance now than it did then, because the movie that came out many, many years ago was not very profitable or successful. I think Star Wars came out around a time where we never saw storytelling like Game of Thrones, and I'm not saying that Star Wars doesn't have as smart of storytelling as Dune, but Dune's storytelling is a lot more complex, and it's a lot slower, and it wants to build to these epic climaxes, because I did kind of loosely read up. I read the first book, I haven't read the others, but I read the synopsises of them, and it sounds like they do get very exciting, but again, it's a slow build. It doesn't come right out of the gate swinging. But like I said, I think it has an advantage now, because people are more accustomed to the slower burn of something exciting happen, like in Game of Thrones. And I also think that, being that there is no Lord of the Rings and there is no Star Wars anymore, I think that that's going to benefit this movie greatly, that people are going to kind of go just to see the next big, epic sci-fi. And going all the way back to what I said before, I don't think this is going to put a new stamp on the genre that we haven't seen before the way Star Wars did. And I don't think it's going to make $2 billion like The Force Awakens did when it first came out. I don't even think it's going to make $1 billion. But I do think it's going to make a lot of money. I think that a lot of people might not see this movie just because some people like me, like my uncle, did not like the first one. And he is not excited for this movie at all. He wasn't excited for the last Star Wars movie at all. He's more of a word-of-mouth kind of guy. He's going to kind of wait until this movie's out for a couple of weeks, get feedback from his friends, and if he likes it, he'll wind up renting it on Redbox and watching it there. And I think a lot of people might follow that trend, but I do think that there will be a large audience that does go out to support this movie just for the sake that it's the only sci-fi thing we got going. And look, I'm not saying this movie's going to be bad. I'm not saying it's going to be boring, but I do know that it's based off of the first half of the book, and from what I remember correctly of the first half of the book, it's a lot of setup. That's going to be a little difficult to sell if you're only adapting the first half of one book, and nothing really that exciting happens in that first half. But look, Denis Villeneuve is directing this movie, and I have loved every single thing he's done, from Arrival to Sicario to Prisoners to Blade Runner 2049, which did not get the recognition it deserved. I mean, it got reviewed well. It was very high on the reviews by both audiences and fans. The problem is that no one went to see the movie, so it didn't make any money. I think it actually lost money, which is a shame, because it was brilliant and expertly written, expertly directed, expertly acted, expertly choreographed, expertly cinematography, whatever you want to call it. Everything about it was perfect. Loved that movie, and the fact that he's behind it tells me that it's going to be okay. He's not just going to make something that's just boring for 2.5 hours, you know what I mean? And the other thing that kind of gives me confidence in the fact that, he's going to make this more than what I think it's going to be and make it better than I think it's going to be is because of the cast. Holy shit. This movie's going to star Rebecca Ferguson, Timothy Chalamet as the main character, who John Campbell likes to think is the next Daniel Day-Lewis, Jason Momoa, Zendaya, Dave Bautista, Josh Brolin, Thanos himself, Oscar Isaac, Stellan Skarsgård, Javier Bardem, and it goes on and on and on. And these are A-list actors, man. You got Aquaman, you got Thanos, you got Apocalypse, you got a great villain from Skyfall. You got a lot of talent behind this movie, and I have to believe that these actors would not sign up to be in this script if they didn't read this script and were super blown away by it. Now, the only reason I am not 100% cemented in believing this is going to be the greatest thing ever is, again, because I've seen the first one, I know what the source material is, and I know that the first half of the book is not my favorite part of the book. So some would argue that maybe they're just signing on because it's a big paycheck, and Warner Brothers is doing this movie. They also own DC Comics. They own Harry Potter. They did all the Hobbit movies, which were very successful for them. Harry Potter was very successful for them. They want to own the next big franchise. So they're, on all cylinders behind this movie. They're backing this movie 100%, giving Denis Villeneuve the budget he wants. They want this to be a trilogy. He's doing the first 2 movies, I believe. If the first one's successful, he's going to do the second one at least, and then they're going to have someone else come in and do the third one. But they have faith in this movie too, because the budget, I don't know what it is exactly, but I know it is substantial. And again, with Denis Villeneuve at the directing chair and this cast behind this movie, although I'm not 110% sold, I'm damn near close that this movie is going to be something special. Again, I don't think it's going to put a stamp on the genre like what Star Wars did, that reinvented cinema and how we could perceive movies. And I could be wrong. It could. I just don't think it will because, again, I know the source material, and it doesn't do anything, in my opinion, that will reinvent anything. But again, Denis Villeneuve is a visionary filmmaker, and he might take this source material and make it better. I don't know. It could reinvent it, but as of right now, I do not think it's going to be the next Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. I don't know if it's going to be as good as them, but both those movies reinvented the way we do things. Like with Star Wars, reinvented sci-fi, obviously. With Lord of the Rings, you never seen battles like that on screen before, with so many people dressed up in cosmetic costumes and battling along an actual set-built wall, with all the choreography that went into it. And it was just this big, sprawling, beautiful story. And you haven't seen anything like that since then. And I don't know if Dune could bring anything to the table that'll really change the way we view genre, but I don't know. It is Denis Villeneuve. So do I think this movie's going to be successful? Yes, but not by a landslide. I don't think it's going to make $1 billion. I think it could potentially make between 600 to 800 million. But there is also a little nagging thing behind me saying, hey, Denis Villeneuve movies have never been successful, financially at least. Blade Runner lost money. Arrival only made a little bit of money. It made a little bit more than it should have, only because of the Oscar nominations. And what usually happens is when a movie gets nominated for an Oscar, there's a bunch of people that weren't initially going to see the movie that run out to see it. That kind of saved The Shape of Water, Guillermo del Toro's movie, which it was stagnant at a $20 million. And then after the Oscar nomination, it skyrocketed up to 100-something million. Same thing happened with Parasite and Jojo Rabbit this year. Sicario didn't make a whole lot of money. Prisoners didn't really make a whole lot of money. So this guy's never made a movie that people flocked to. But he's also done a lot of original ideas. Minus Blade Runner. That wasn't an original idea of his, but the first Blade Runner was a tank too. It didn't make a lot of money. It's just that it gained such a huge cult following afterwards that I guess Warner Brothers was like, hey, we'll take a chance on this and maybe more people will show up this time around now that the whole world has had a chance to see the original. Didn't work. But again, we don't have a Lord of the Rings or a Star Wars anymore, so this might be the only thing that people get that's close to that, so that might help this movie benefit a lot. Anyway, I'm really excited for this movie. I'm excited for my fix of new sci-fi that we haven't seen before. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Are you excited for this movie? Did you see the original? Do you think it's going to be successful? Do you think it's going to be more successful than Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter? Let's talk about it down below, and as always, I'll catch you next time.